Hello, I'm Enzo, and how hard is it to beat Borderlands 3's DLCs with only Legendaries? The rules of this run are, I can only use Legendary gear, no Guardian rank, and I will be starting with nothing but one Legendary gun of my choice. I will also be starting the DLCs on Mayhem level 3, however I decreased it to 2 early on. I decided the gun I would use is the Maggie, because of its previous performance, but this was a huge mistake. The first DLC I plan to tackle is the Handsome Jackpot. Going into this run, my first thought was, how bad could it be? The answer? It was insanely difficult, but not impossible. One of the major factors in the beginning was using the Maggie instead of an elemental weapon, and forgetting to swap Amara's element to Shock. Early progress was insanely slow and involved a few deaths, but the most difficult fight was this baddie hot loader. To beat him, I had to keep kiting backwards and hiding behind cover, making him basically a mini-boss. And if you think that's not enough suffering, it took me multiple deaths and over 8 minutes to kill all of these guys. And to do that, I had to sit back, carefully fire a few shots, get behind cover, reload, and repeat the process infinitely until I finally killed all of them. This first DLC was horrible due to both the lack of a shield and me using the Maggie instead of an elemental gun. And to add insult to this already difficult run, the reason I skipped most of the footage in the beginning is because in all 3 hours and 30 minutes of the first stream, I got one Legendary in Mayhem level 3. And the best part, I can't even use it. At this point, I decided to go ahead and get the Brainstormer that I had, because it did better damage, it was elemental. I also bought a shield just in case I needed it. The scrap traps are my favorite enemies in the game, mostly because of how fun they are to chain kill. And even though I tried, I knew I couldn't kill the scrap trap on Mayhem 3. So the next day I turned off Mayhem, but the fight was still pretty tough, mostly because the saw blade attack that is both difficult to dodge and health gates me, aka one more hit and I'm dead. He dropped 2 Amara class mods and the Lucky 7, which is a great haul. A gun and any other element would have been nice, but I mean there are a bunch of human enemies in this section, so at least it's useful for now. Something I'm going to say about this run right now is most of the time when I played these levels, the Loot Universe event just happened to be where I was at that time. That's the main reason for getting so many extra legendaries, especially in here. But it only gets crazier as the run goes on. Oddly enough, the elemental pool that the Ember's Purge makes is actually really powerful against everything, even armored enemies, even though it's still not the best. I finished the level, which had a ton of fun mobbing at the end, and I went back to have a rematch with Scraptrap Prime. The fight went pretty much the same, it just took way longer. I also learned that his minions stopped spawning after a while, meaning if I died during this fight, I would probably lose what little sanity I have left. I got a better Lucky 7 and another class mod from him. The Lucky 7 is nice, but this is a slightly better pistol. But finally, a decent corrosive weapon. This will hopefully help. At first, I thought the Fabricator fight was impossible. So after 3 deaths, I activated one of my emergency measures, turning on Guardian rank. And finally, this time I managed to beat it. The first step was to take down his shield. For the whole DLC, I've had Amara's element to be Shock. It's been most convenient, especially considering the only other one I have access to is Fire. Most of my guns aren't great for destroying shields, so I just used whatever I had, except the corrosive shotgun. I used that only after breaking its shield, and from there, it wasn't too bad. The other main issue was just dealing with all the robots that spawned because they were the killers, not the Fabricator. And if you didn't know, the Fabricator has a guaranteed drop of the ion cannon, skipping a ton of mobbing onto what was probably the most difficult fight in the game. Nah, I'm just kidding. This is Freddy. If you didn't know, Freddy has a glitch that happens very often where he spawns in at level 2. You can probably guess what happens. The robots that spawn in with him were more difficult than him. He literally died to my bullet ricochet. It's just sad. I still don't know how they have not patched this bug by now. And from that fight, I got 3 pretty much useless sniper rifles. Like most other fights so far, the jackpot fight was difficult, but certainly not impossible. And all was going well until his 3rd armor phase. I was starting to run out of ammo for most things, so I got a little bit desperate. And in my desperation, the PP loaders managed to overwhelm me. Yes, you heard that right, the PP loaders got me. Yeah, that was very sad, and I just about lost it there. So I decided to turn off Mayhem, because I had already proven it's possible, I just didn't want to do all of that again. The first run took over 15 minutes. This run is finally down to around 5, and I pretty much melted him. The only phase I actually had trouble with for once is the health phase. This is mostly just because he's moving around so fast I couldn't really keep track of him. And either way, he does an unholy amount of damage, especially in his health phase. But it's finally done. Gotta love useless cosmetics. Also, the 1000 IQ move, and the main reason I wanted to do this DLC first, is because you get a guaranteed shield at the end, making my later progression way easier. After finishing the Handsome Jackpot, I decided to do one of my favorite events, Revenge of the Cartels. There's a lot of good loot in here that I could get, but I didn't really get anything good, except for a shield that I get now after already getting a legendary shield for free. Awesome. Because I don't have Mayhem on, the Joy Ultraviolet fight wasn't too bad. For some reason, once you turn on Mayhem, he just becomes an insane bullet sponge. But yeah, he literally just got melted, as usual, with Mayhem off. He dropped 2 more shields, now that I already have 2, and the no pew pew, which actually came in handy later on. On to the next DLC, Bounty of Blood. I have to say, this is my absolute favorite DLC in this game. Why? Because Japanese style, but also Wild West. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Wild West, but give me anything Japanese style and I'll love it. The first portion of this DLC was pretty easy, especially because I forgot to turn Mayhem mode back on, but don't worry, in the next clip it will be on and set to level 2. Level 2 is a little bit easier because it's only, I believe, 300% bonus health, armor, and shield instead of 600%, so I have a better time and don't suffer nearly as much. Anyways, this is basically what all of the combat looks like, so I'm gonna skip most of it. Yeah, this looks like the right amount of suffering. Not too difficult, definitely doable, but a little bit of suffering and a lot of time. For all the hate I've previously said about Borderlands 3, Ashfall Peaks and the giant bathhouse makes it all up. This is easily my favorite level in the entire game, purely for its looks. It just looks so freaking good. It's amazingly well themed, the side mission is fun, and the boss fight isn't that bad either. It's even cool how he can use the course floaters against you. But yeah, the boss fight was not very difficult. He actually just stood in the Ember's Purge pool most of the time, and the pool, like I said earlier, does an insane amount of damage, even against robots earlier. So you can probably tell what happens when it does damage to flesh. I also got the Light Show, one of my favorite weapons in this game. Of course I get Corrosive now that I don't need it. Even though it would have been nice to have, you know, Incendiary, Cryo, Radiation, it's still an insanely good gun either way. And I'm definitely going to have to farm for a better one. The only thing of note in the Obsidian Forest is the Lasodactyl. This is the dedicated drop source for the Light Show. However, I've never had good luck with getting a good Light Show to drop from this thing. So we'll see how many farms it takes. This is also one of the few times I actually need to farm for something. I don't need to, but I want it. That's probably the right thing to say. And after 4 more farms, I finally get another Light Show. Conveniently, this one was Cryo. The anointment kinda sucks, but hey, I'll take it. It's still a Light Show, and it's still insanely powerful. The Bellic Primus, I think that's how you say it, was extremely easy, like all of the other mobbing up to this point. This was thanks to a combination of the Light Show, but more importantly, the no pew pew. I haven't really used this gun before, but let me just tell you, this thing is awesome. It isn't as good as a bunch of other guns, but I think in a normal playthrough it's really nice to use. But the legendaries I got weren't that great and I never ended up using them. After that, I decided to farm the other best weapon in this DLC, the Flipper. The Minosaur drops it, but just like the light show, I have infamously bad luck getting it. Of course, the one time I kill the Minosaur up on the rock, then he goes ahead and drops it. Either way, I will gladly take it. And this is the third time I use photo mode to get a legendary. And the best part, the Flipper is radiation. This thing absolutely slaps. Like, the crowd damage is insane. Even the single target damage is great, but it is even better for mobbing. I honestly completely forgot that the Quartermaster fight even existed. But, you know, Cryo Light Show against Armor, you can probably tell how it went. Even on Mayhem 2, the game is really easy at this point. I was considering turning it up to Mayhem 3, but it would have just taken way too long. I still think this is a perfect balance. And another legendary I'm never going to use. Now, for the true reason I love Bounty of Blood so much. A nuclear explosion. Like, tell me in what universe you can go wrong with a nuke. Fallout clearly demonstrates it's one of the coolest things you can ever see, especially in a video game. Yeah, I know the counters were still up there, I didn't consider that at the time, but I took a few cool screenshots. I think this is the coolest scene in any Borderlands game ever. The Rose and Ruiner fight honestly was not that difficult. The most annoying part was just chasing Rose. I swear, all she does is just run. Like, that's all her fight was. I was just chasing her the whole time. Then, you know, her bullet deflecting attacks, which were annoying, but, you know, I can out-heal those easily. So, yeah, not much to say. Here's some music. And guess what I got from the fight? A whole lot of nothing. That's right, I got no legendaries from the Ruiner, which is really disappointing. But hey, at least you get 5 guaranteed legendaries by turning in the mission, although I did not use any of them. After Bounty of Blood, and now that I was a high enough level, I wanted to do the Maliwan Black Site takedown. Takedown on the Maliwan Black Site, whatever it is. I absolutely love this level. It is easily my favorite in the entire game. Why? The mobbing is fun, the bossing is fun. It's annoying when you die and have to go back to your last checkpoint, but the best part? It has the redistributor. Sure, pretty much all the other loot in here kinda sucks, but the redistributor is my favorite gun. So if there's any reason to do this, it's to get that. Even though it's probably not great on Amara, it's best on Zane, I still might as well try and get one, just because I love it so much. I had to turn off Mayhem to be able to complete the level, mostly just because it would have been way too difficult, and dying was a little bit more annoying. Now, considering Mayhem is turned off, basically every enemy gets melted. So let's go straight to Wotan. Wotan the Invincible is always a difficult fight for me. I'll admit, I may have died once, hence the legendaries on the ground. The most difficult part of this fight is not having a shock weapon, meaning nothing I have really does great against the shields, so it's basically just a fight of attrition. And all the minions he spawns are a double-edged sword. Do I kill them to stop them from damaging me, or do I keep them alive so I have second wins? Great question. I kinda have to do both. I have to take some out, but leave some just in case he outdamages my healing. In all though, Wotan is a pretty fun fight. I just really wish I had a shock weapon for this. Most of the loot I always get from Wotan is the Tig's Boom and the Moonfire. So yeah, pretty much the only thing I'm here for is the redistributor. which I conveniently got an incendiary one. I would have liked another element, but I guess I'll take it. It's not useful for running the Molly 1 Black site again, but will be useful later on. After the first run, I decided that my skills were lacking quite a bit, so instead of going in the blue tree, which wasn't working that well, I decided to go into the orange tree like last time, but I also spec'd into the new purple tree, and it turned out to be awesome. Being able to ignore enemy resistances is overpowered. And before I ended the stream, I planned to do a final run, but the game had other plans and decided to crash. With that tragedy, I decided to do a few runs off stream, and on the second one I got my shock redistributor. Thinking about it now though, I don't really need it, considering the incendiary redistributor is going to be way more useful in the next DLC, but whatever. At the beginning of the next stream, I decided to fight Joey Ultraviolet again, this time on Mayhem 2. The issue with this fight that I always have is whenever I turn on Mayhem and do Revenge of the Cartels, Joey always just feels like a bullet sponge. He just takes so insanely long to kill. Like this fight alone took 15 minutes to beat, and I didn't even really use any of the legendaries that I got, so there's no real point to it. I don't know why I always do this in Mayhem, so yeah, there's that I guess. The next DLC I'm going to be working on is Guns, Love, and Tentacles. I'm gonna try and pick up the pace here a bit, so I'm gonna be skipping most of the mobbing. But let me just tell you, this incendiary redistributor was pretty nice for all of it. Sure, it definitely has better potential on other Vault Hunters, but it was still really fun, and it is still my favorite weapon in this game. Because my guns were starting to become way underleveled, the Vincent fight was pretty difficult. It was also really annoying because I guess he has a lifesteal ability, and I didn't realize it until, he was regenerating like crazy. So all in all, not too bad, but like every other fight in this game, it just took a while. But the nice thing is that you can actually phase grasp him, which I didn't expect because he's a boss. Probably a mini boss technically, but whatever, I'll take it. I'll also take this Rowan's Call. It ended up being like one of my favorite guns in this entire run, and it carried me through this entire DLC. Just look at how broken this gun is, I love it so much. Powered Scholar fight is always really annoying. This time it was especially bad because, yet again, still have not the greatest weapons, and my aim was horrible today for some reason. But the main thing I hate about this fight is the fact that you have to stand on the platforms and do all that parkour to destroy the crystals, while he regenerates a shield and an armor bar. And if you do fall off, the whole fight resets and you have to do it all over again. Thankfully, I did not have to do it this time. The Aista fight was extremely easy because a majority of his attacks are melee, and the rest are extremely easy to dodge. So it was just, another bullet sponge fight. However, later on in this fight, I decided to try a new ability, the Orb. I had previously tried the Orb against the Handsome Jackbot, but it kind of just teleported into the ground each time. I learned that you have to aim it in the middle of your screen. You cannot aim it at the ground in any way, or it'll just go straight into the ground. The Orb is actually pretty broken, although I used the wrong version of it. I should have used the one where whenever you shoot an enemy, the Orb automatically goes to them instead of you hitting it yourself. Overall, I believe that the Orb has great potential for bossing in the future. Well, actually, yes, I do know the Orb has great potential. It worked out very well in future boss fights. I also have to say, this might be the most suspicious line in the entire game.
Few rounds with a legendary creature, you know I'm in.
I also completely forgot my plan to farm the Yeti, so here it is. And on the second farm attempt, I got a little Yeti, which is awesome. It's finally nice to have a slightly better gun. And yet again, Loot Universe prevails, and I get a Stone class mod, which is great because this is exactly what I plan to use for Amara. Since I'm in the area, I decided to find the Mark. I think that's how you pronounce it. It can drop the torch shield. I got one on the second try, but it ended up being worse than my current shield, but I might as well try it. The Wendigo fight is just like all of the others. Bullet Sponge just took a while, wasn't too difficult. And the best part, of course, is I had Hammerlock to revive me in case I needed it, which I did a few times. The major thing to talk about here is I finally learned how to use the orb, and the right version of it to use, and it was pretty awesome. I think I need to try an orb-only run in the future. I also got a shotgun called the Insider. I kinda wished I used it more because it looks really cool, but the recoil was way too crazy to be actually good. The reason I've skipped most of the mobbing is because it's all the same, but I mean, the bosses have all been the same at this point too. Not difficult, just bullet sponges, it just takes a while. That's why this is so sped up. And I didn't even get good legendaries from it either. Up to this point, I haven't even had a relic yet because I haven't gotten any good drops. However, you get the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge for free from Claptrap in this DLC. It's one of the best, probably the best artifact in the game, and I'll gladly take it. Again, thanks to Loot the Universe, I have found one of my new favorite weapons in this game. This is just a completely random drop too. It's called the SF Force. It's kind of like the ion laser, where it's an SMG that makes a laser, but it fires both elements and it pierces through enemies. This ended up being one of my favorite guns in the entire game, and it spanned through multiple DLCs. This thing is so insanely powerful. Sam and Tom were literally just Rowan's Call's critical farm. Like, that's all that happened here. I got another SF Force, but it was nowhere near as good as the original one I had. Eleanor and the Heart were exactly like every other boss so far in this DLC, but the SF Force made it a little bit easier. Here's some music. And for that annoying as usual fight, a Thunderball Fists. Of course. Before the next DLC, I wanted to farm a base game item. It took me quite a few farms, but I wanted to try out the Rough Rider on Amara, just to see how it would work. The Rough Rider is not the best shield in the game, but I think it's still a very fun playstyle, especially when you have a lot of lifesteal. Psycho Krieg's Fantastic Fuster Cluck. This is probably one of my favorite DLCs. I don't know where it ranks, but I think it's contesting first place. This first part is potentially the best level in the game. It's so perfect. The soundtrack is beautiful. The chaos is beautiful. So here, listen to this. I completely forgot there is a chest that just gives you a bunch of free legendaries. I got 6 legendaries from this chest, but used, guess how many? 0. That walking animation's just funny. Oh, you're approaching me? Instead of running away, you're approaching me? I decided to use the Faulty Star because the Rough Rider wasn't really working as good as I had hoped. The reason I skipped the evil Mordecai and Brick fight is because all of these boss fights are just the same at this point. I can't die, the boss just has a lot of health and is a bullet sponge. The main thing I learned from the most recent fights is with the orb, I need to have the soul sap, which gives me lifesteal from my ability so that I have even more survival. I also learned that you can destroy the orbs that Lois spawns for second wins, which is very nice, as I had no clue how to beat her last time. Yes, this is only my second time doing this DLC, but I love it. And if I ever just cut to the next scene after beating a boss, it's because I got nothing good. I've had a legendary grenade for quite a while now, but I haven't really been using it, and now it's extremely underleveled. So after finding a firestorm in a vending machine, I thought, why not? It helped me out so much in the last video, I might as well pay tribute to the Firestorm again. The Loco Mobius fight was absolutely no challenge. I had Maya if I needed revives, I swapped Amara's element to Corrosive to help with the armor, I had a cryo weapon. The rest is self-explanatory. The only real issue with the Psycho Reaver was I was actually running out of ammo for most of my weapons, and I had to turn Mayhem mode off because he just had way too much health and did a little bit too much damage for me to out-heal. But yeah, same as all the other boss fights. I'm not going to use any of these, but still, cool legendaries to get. I didn't realize it at the time, but doing Ava's DLC, this guy is the dedicated drop source for the Revolter, which is pretty much the best shield for most Vault Hunters, so I'll gladly take it. Also, the main reason my game is crashing, I believe, is the Xbox overheating, so that's why I've had so many crashes in this run. It's weird that it didn't happen in the last video though. When I was on Sanctuary, Loot the Universe was also happening there, so I got an unholy amount of legendaries there as well. Since I got to Pandora, I've been using the Replay. I don't think it's that great of a gun, but then I found my new favorite legendary pistol, the Free Radical. This thing is awesome. It only comes in shock, but with Amara's other elements, it can be a deadly combination. I'm not a huge fan of this DLC, but Pandora is definitely my favorite level, especially with the discovery of the Free Radical. There's something just about this level and the factor that I love so much. It's such a well done and fun level. Beef Pliskin literally just got melted, but the real thing I love about this fight is just how he dies. It's awesome. While I was on Necro DeFeo, I also got the Slaughter Star 3000 mission because I kinda want to farm that for a certain gun. I hate this entire level, but at least I crashed before I got too far into it. Since the rest of this level sucks, I'm just gonna skip straight to the Seer. This fight was pathetic. Just like all the other boss fights, kind of a bullet sponge, but not really because the Free Radical being shock. Either way, this fight was a piece of cake. Finding this class mod got me even more interested in an Amara Orb only run. It has been forever, and I mean years since I last did the Halloween event. I don't think there are any great rewards from this, but it's still a really cool area, and I mean it's called the Heck Hole. Either way, the Captain Trant fight isn't too special. Although I didn't use this shotgun that much, I think it's still a pretty cool gun. Just by looks, of course. And to wrap the DLCs and events up, I decided to do the Slaughter Star 3000. It's been a long time since I did this as well, and while I was doing it, I had the Broken Hearts event active. This basically adds hearts above the enemies' heads, and if you shoot them, they do different buffs and stuff. And so I got an unholy amount of legendaries from this. Unfortunately, you can only get 2 legendaries from this event, and they're both kind of useless. But it was good to see what it did again. I still think Revenge of the Cartels is my favorite event just because of how fun the whole place is to go through. And the Slaughter Star wasn't difficult at all. I died a few times near the end, but those were to really stupid reasons. And the 2 bosses at the end were extremely easy. But here's when the funny part happens. The mission doesn't end. I don't know if there's just like an enemy somewhere or if it was completely bugged, which is my guess. But yeah, so I didn't get any reward for completing this whole Slaughter Star, which is very annoying. Of course, I have mentioned the fact that the legendaries fell off the map as well, but it's whatever. Anyways, that's going to be the end of the video. I know this one wasn't as good as the others because I've kind of ran out of energy playing Borderlands 3. It was extremely fun at the beginning, but after doing these DLCs, I kind of just lost my energy and sanity. And I haven't even shown footage of doing the Guardian takedown and Stormblind Complex. Trust me, those did not go well. I was very mad at both of them. But thank you all for watching and your support on these videos. I always appreciate it. And this is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming signing out. Peace and time, we've never had it so good.